put my money there and it's still the same amount. It's only growing ever so slightly. Hi guys, my name is andiswa.mojapelo and welcome to my channel. If you are new here, I really hope you enjoy the content and that you decide to stick around. We chat about all things related to money and adulting in general. And if you're a returning subscriber, welcome home. Thank you for watching this video. And I really hope you find this topic insightful. So guys, today we are talking about, are you investing, saving, or speculating? And the reason I wanted to chat about this, okay, is because if there's one common question that I get asked, or rather that I've been asked in the industry that I'm in, it's Andiswa, where do I put my money? Okay, I get this question all the time. Where should I be putting my money? I want to get the most out. I need it at a specific time. Where do I put my money? Where do I invest my money? Right? And it's never easy, or rather, in fact, it's not possible to answer this question in one way unless you have an understanding of a person's individual circumstances. And on that note, actually, on that very important note, please remember that none of my videos constitute financial advice. If it is financial advice that you are looking for your individual circumstances, you need to contact someone who is registered with the FSCA so they can be able to analyze your situation and then advise you accordingly. Right. So back to the actual topic. So what I was saying is that in most times when you unpack this topic and you begin to understand the circumstances, I sometimes find that an individual is not really sure if it is an investment they are looking for, if it is a savings, are they trying to speculate? They're not really sure. And that's why I thought it's important to have a chat about this, right? And I think the first thing to note is that these three things serve their own purpose in different ways, but they are certainly not the same thing. And you need to understand that they are not, so that you can manage your expectations on what you are hoping to get out of each one, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to look at savings alongside investments and what some of the differences are when you're looking at those two things. And then at the end, we can tie in speculating to figure out what that has to do with anything and how it fits into the equation. First important thing is that volatility is something to be very aware of when you are looking at these options, right? So in your traditional investments, in most cases, you will find that your investment is somehow tied or invested in the financial markets. So your financial markets would be things like your shares, your bonds, and all of those moving factors, right? So your investments, even if it's through an ETF or it's through actual equity shares or however you are invested, but there will be that layer of financial markets that is there, either one aspect or a mixture, right? And what that does is that it means that your investment is volatile. Your investment value will not stay the same. It will move as the financial markets move, right? So if you have taken a look at shares previously, you'll notice that share prices change on a daily basis. In fact, not only on a daily basis, they actually change constantly throughout the day. So which means that the value of your investment will also not remain the same. It can go up, it can go down. Yes, it means your capital can actually go down. You can find yourself having less than what you actually investment because of the movement, particularly in the short term. Whereas with your savings, you have something called a capital guarantee in most cases, meaning that whatever you have saved and put into your bank account, you will find there. The bank that you are with will guarantee that you will find your savings and you will find that interest that they've promised you added onto your savings on a monthly basis, right? So in terms of volatility, the other one moves quite a lot, and the savings doesn't move as much, or rather it moves, but it moves in most cases with inflation and quite slowly. So as an example, right, if I am looking to pay school fees in the next 3 months as Andiswa, and I know that I am liable for these fees in the next 3 months, what you need to consider is, in terms of volatility, would I want something that rises very high and also could drop very low, or would I want something very stable, something that I'm sure I'll get at least inflation for it and I'll be able to meet those demands at that 3 months when the fees are due, right? So that's the rationale that I would think through before deciding, given that I have a school fees goal in 3 months, which option I am taking of these two. This brings me to my second area, which is time frame, right? So investments are very volatile. And they move in the short term. But when you look at investment growth in the long term and you take a very long term growth view, you sometimes find that they do stabilize in the long term. So there's lots of ups and downs in the short term, but they do stabilize in the long term, right? And those ups and downs are basically caused by risk, which I will discuss after this. But the point is that if you have a long-term view, most of your investments will probably stabilize in the long term, right? So in general, when you're looking at investments, one should actually follow quite a long-term view in order to avoid the panic that happens in between. Whereas if you need to pay school fees in 3 months, you will panic if you find that capital down. You will panic if you find that you're running at a minus 20% loss in the next 3 months, which is possible, right? Depending on the type of investment, because there's fluctuations. So what I'm getting at here is that when you have a specific goal and it is a short-term goal, or you have a specific demand that you need to meet, whether it's school fees, something you need to pay for, or a holiday you need to go to, in most cases, you look at something more stable, something more guaranteed, where the money is going to be available. But if you're looking for long-term growth, and if you're looking for something that's really going to capitalize on the opportunity to grow in the very long term, then in terms of time frame, you're looking at the long term and you're looking at something that is more investment aligned. Now to the risk part, okay? The risk element is also quite different between savings and between investments as well. So with investments, right, the idea of an investment is in most cases to beat inflation, right? So we have inflation that eats away at the value of our money. So 10 Rand today is not equal to 10 Rand in 5 years. Now, what investments try to do is that they try to make up for inflation. So they try to make sure that in 10 years, you have an equal value of 10 Rand, but not only that, you have more than 10 Rand, right? So they're trying to outperform the inflation rate and leave you in a better position as well. This takes a level amount of risk to do, right? If it was easy for 10 Rand to just become 50 Rand, everybody would be doing it. And if it was done at no risk, then obviously we'd be, growing money at exorbitant amounts in short periods of time. But in order to do this, you have to make some difficult decisions. Those difficult decisions come with some element of risk involved. That's why investments are not as guaranteed as your savings, because whoever is investing, whether it's a fund manager, an investment and manager, or an advisor, is looking at some aspects and he's saying, okay, cool. I may not have a guarantee that this amount will be this amount, but because of the knowledge that I have and the research, this is probably going to be the outcome. I'm willing to take the risk. So investments have a higher risk because they are trying to outbeat inflation and have to make some difficult decisions in order to do so. Whereas your savings, on the other hand, are lower risk in the sense that you will have your capital, you will have your interest that was promised to you. However, because of the low element of risk, you're also not going to have exorbitant amounts of return on your savings account. And I know sometimes people complain that, I've put my money there and it's still the same amount. It's only growing ever so slightly, but you'll often find that you're not taking any level of risk with that money. Hence, the growth is quite limited. So risk and return have what we call a positive correlation or a positive relationship, in the sense that they move in the same direction. So the more amount of risk that you are willing to take, the higher the potential return that you could actually get, right? And that's an important point to understand. And also note that I didn't say the higher risk you take, the higher return you get, because it's also not guaranteed. But the potential of the return that you could get is higher because you are willing to take on a higher element of risk. Again, when it comes to risk, very important to consider. Can I take a risk? Can I not? Is this the type of goal where a risk is something I can take, or is it not? Okay, so where does speculating come into play with all of this? So speculating happens when you are trying to bypass all of these things that I've mentioned, and you are trying to get a lot of return in the least amount of time, so in a short period, and you're trying to input as little as possible in order to get that. So that would be speculating, right? And not necessarily investing. So let me make an example. I hear that there is something that came up and it is called MCF, and you put in 5,000 Rand, and then in the next week you get 10,000 Rand back, and that's how the money is made, right? And I don't have any prior research. I don't understand the mechanics of what's driving this to increase to 10,000 Rand in a week. I don't understand how it works. I don't have any evidence that this could be true, but I'm just going on my hunch that this money is going to double in the next week, which is a huge return in a very short space of time, which is not how things normally happen, right? So that's what speculating would be. Some people call it gambling. It's taking chances, right? So you are putting in something, hoping for the best and hoping that something good really comes out without a lot of evidence or without a lot of proof that it can do this. So sometimes people speculate with shares, right? They buy shares not to invest for the long term and get an outcome based on research, but to get a super high return in the short space of time when the share price goes up. So when you're not using any evidence or fundamental analysis or research, you're actually speculating with that share. You are buying it in hopes that it's going to go super high in the short space of time. Then you would be speculating, right? And that's the term that we would use. So it's important to understand the differences between these three things. And no one is saying which one is wrong for you, which one is right for you. We can't say that. But the important thing is that you need to understand what purpose each one serves. So personally, I have done all three in my financial journey, right? But I understood which one to plug where, and where one would serve the best purpose. For instance, you don't want to find yourself in a position where you are saving for 20 years and then when you go back, you're like, oh my God, I didn't get a really good return. It's been 20 years and this thing is not growing. Why? Maybe it's because you were not investing, you were just saving. So what you were doing is just preserving your capital with a bit of inflation, and you weren't necessarily taking some risk for long-term returns. You also don't want to think that you are investing, but you are speculating. So if you don't have any evidence, you don't have any historic proof that something's going to do really well and get returns, you don't have any reliable, support to prove that something's going to do really well, and you just put your money in there and expect the best, you are taking a very high risk chance and you are speculating. And the results could go either way. But when you understand that you are doing that, you're not going to be disappointed when you don't get the right outcome. I hope I've been able to explain some of the differences between these three things, and also through examples, get you thinking about which one of these three you are doing or which one of these three you should be doing based on your goals. And I hope that you are able to answer if you are already saving, investing, or speculating. If you found this video insightful, please don't forget to leave me a huge thumbs up and also consider subscribing if you haven't, so I can see you in the next one. Bye.